Hello and welcome. Today we're tackling something incredibly important, but also something that's often completely hidden from view: caregiver burnout. It's a kind of injury that you can't see, but its impact, well, it can be absolutely devastating. So let's get right into it.
If you break your arm, it's pretty straightforward. You get an x-ray, and right there, in black and white, is a clear line. A fracture. The problem is visible. A doctor can literally point to it and say, that's the issue, and here's how we fix it. There's a certain comfort in that clarity, right?
But for a caregiver who's struggling, there is no x-ray. Burnout is a completely invisible injury. Someone can be totally collapsing on the inside, emotionally and mentally, but on the outside, they might look just fine. There's no scan, no test that can just pinpoint the damage.
And that, right there, is the central question we're trying to answer today. If you can't even see the injury, where do you possibly begin to treat it? How do you heal a wound that doesn't have a physical shape?
Well, our guide for this whole exploration is the Mindful Giving Training Manual from SVT Home Healthcare Services. And what's so fascinating is that it reveals this kind of internal debate between two very different philosophies. Is the answer found inside our own minds, or is it about changing the world around us? Let's dig into that first argument. Okay, so the first perspective is all about what we're going to call the inner shield. The idea here is that your most powerful weapon against burnout isn't getting more help or taking a day off, it's actually your own mind. The manual uses this incredibly powerful metaphor. A caregiver's day is like walking through an emotional minefield. You just know there are gonna be unexpected explosions, a patient's sudden anger, a medical crisis. You can't control where those mines are buried, but you can control how carefully you walk. So this whole approach is about controlling your own reactions. It's about building mental skills, like practicing mindfulness to stay in the moment, or developing emotional distance so you don't absorb someone else's pain. And a big one, letting go of the idea that you can be the perfect caregiver. It's all about building this internal defense system. Now, let's just zoom in on this idea of emotional distance for a sec, because it's really important. This does not mean being cold or that you don't care. It's actually a conscious act of self-preservation. It's the ability to understand that, say, when a patient with dementia lashes out, that's the disease talking, not the person you love. And that mental shield is absolutely critical if you're going to be in this for the long haul. All right, now for the other side of the coin. This perspective, what we're calling the structural foundation, says, hold on a minute. Mental strength is great, but it's not enough. Without a real, solid support system in the outside world, even the strongest mind is eventually going to crack. And this quote just cuts right to the chase. The manual lays it out like a simple math problem. Overwork is burnout. You can't just think your way out of total exhaustion. Our bodies, our brains, they have biological limits, and no amount of positive thinking can make up for a lack of actual physical rest. So, as you can see, the tactics here are completely different. They're not internal, they're external, they're practical. We're talking about things like strict daily schedules, mandatory breaks, actually asking for help from others, and making sure you're getting enough sleep and decent food. This isn't about managing your reaction to a crisis. It's about building a system so that crisis is less likely to happen at all. And get this, there's real science behind this. Deep in our brains, there's a part called the amygdala, and you can think of it like a super sensitive fire alarm. When you are physically run down from no sleep and just constant stress, that fire alarm gets a hair trigger. A tiny little puff of smoke, like a patient saying something slightly annoying, can set off this massive 5-alarm stress response. You can't just tell your brain to calm down. It physically needs rest to reset itself. So where do these two philosophies really clash? Well, it all comes down to how they handle a crisis. It's the difference between what you do in the heat of the moment versus what you do to stop that moment from ever catching fire in the first place. This slide really just lays it all out. The inner shield is all about managing the fire once it's already started. But the structural foundation, that's about fireproofing the whole building. One is a reaction, the other is prevention. So just imagine this scenario for a second. A patient suddenly gets agitated and starts shouting. Right then, in that moment, you can't exactly say, hang on, I need to take a mandatory break, my amygdala is going nuts. No! The only tool you have is your internal state, your ability to stay calm, to not take it personally, and to try and de-escalate the situation. That's the inner shield in action. But, and this is a huge but, here comes that powerful counter-argument. What if you could prevent that outburst from happening at all? The structural foundation approach argues that a really well-built external system, Specifically, a predictable daily routine is maybe the most powerful de-escalation tool there is. I mean, think about it from the patient's perspective, especially someone living with dementia. Their world can be incredibly confusing, even frightening. A strict routine, breakfast at 8, walk at 10, lunch at noon, that provides an external structure, a framework of safety. It lets them know what's coming next, which reduces their anxiety and in turn reduces the chances of those agitated outbursts.
So, after hearing both sides of this, you might be thinking, okay, so which one is right? But like with most really complex problems, the answer isn't about picking a side. It's about combining them. This is not an either-or situation. It's a both-and.
Because at the end of the day, both arguments agree on this one single fundamental truth. The health of the patient depends entirely on the health of the caregiver. Taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It is the absolute foundation for taking care of someone else.
And this is just a brilliant way to understand the solution. The source uses this fantastic metaphor of a car. All that external support, the rest, the help from family, the daily routine, that's the petrol. It's the fuel. Without it, the car just stops. It doesn't matter how great a driver you are. But all those internal skills, the mindfulness, the calm, the emotional distance, that's the driver. You could have a full tank of gas, but if you don't have a focused driver behind the wheel, that car is going to crash. You absolutely need both.
So here's the big takeaway. The structural foundation, that's what gives you the energy to do the job. And the inner shield, that's what gives you the focus to do the job well. If you're missing one, you're headed for failure. You'll either burn out completely from exhaustion, or you'll make a dangerous mistake because you just weren't mentally there. Protecting yourself is protecting your loved one. And that really leaves us with a final thought, a question for all of us. Chances are we all know someone who's a caregiver, and they need both a well-fueled car and the skill to drive it through a storm. So the question for us is, which part are we helping them build? Are we offering to fill up their tank by giving them a break? Or are we supporting their mental well-being, helping them become a better driver? The real answer, of course, is that they need our help with both.